Dead men tell no tales, but their ships speak volumes. Welcome to the Cursed Compass, where we explore the darkest maritime mysteries. Off the coast of Atlantic Canada, a persistent maritime legend, known as the Teazer Light, has haunted Mahone Bay for over 2 centuries. Witnesses describe a phantom schooner appearing out of nowhere, entirely enveloped in thick smoke and roiling flames. These sightings are tied to a specific date on the calendar, peaking annually on the exact anniversary of June 27th. Environmental triggers are often reported alongside these sightings, specifically dense fog settling over the water within 3 days of a full moon. This narrative maps precisely to a documented historical anomaly from the early 19th century. Far from a spooky campfire story, the fiery destruction of the ship was a calculated, rational decision, driven by the rigid protocols of 1800s naval law. To understand the genesis of this ghost ship, we must examine the unforgiving mechanics of the War of 1812 prisoner parole system. The history begins with a small schooner named the Teazer, owned by a New York merchant named Samuel Adams. When the War of 1812 broke out, the Teazer was among the first American privateers to put to sea, commissioned to hunt British commercial shipping. This schematic illustrates the advantage of the schooner design. These vessels were built for speed and pursuit rather than heavy, sustained combat. This design strategy proved effective immediately, allowing the Teazer to intercept a significant amount of British coastal trade. During its first voyage, the privateer captured 6 brigs and 6 schooners, sending them back to American ports as prizes of war. Records from the period name several of these captured prizes, specifically the Venus and the Osborne. The crew also secured a major prize in the Peter Waldo, an 1811-built ship. The Peter Waldo was taken to Portland, Maine, where it was sold at auction on August 12, 1812. This rapid success meant the Teazer had effectively painted a target on itself, drawing the attention of the British Royal Navy's heaviest warships. The Teazer's initial run was lucrative, but short-lived. On January 17, 1813, the British fleet successfully cornered the privateer. The vessel that intercepted her was the heavily armed HMS San Domingo, a massive ship of the line that easily overwhelmed the small schooner. British sailors boarded the Teazer to seize its assets before they set her afire, destroying the ship on the open ocean. Under the protocols of the time, the captured American officers were not immediately sent to a prison ship. One of these officers was a privateer lieutenant named Frederick Johnson. Johnson and his peers were released under a strict 19th century legal oath known as naval parole. They were freed only after promising they would not fight against Great Britain again. This release was conditional, remaining in effect until an equivalent British prisoner was exchanged. Breaking this parole carried an absolute penalty. Recaptured officers violating this oath forfeited all protections as prisoners of war and faced certain execution. From January 17th onward, Lieutenant Johnson was operating under a legally binding death sentence if he ever returned to sea before a formal trade. Despite the risks, owner Samuel Adams moved quickly to replace his lost vessel. He commissioned the Young Teazer, built to be larger and faster than the original schooner. Johnson chose to return to the war as the Young Teazer's first lieutenant, a direct violation of his unexchanged parole. By June 1813, the Young Teazer was being hunted aggressively by British forces along the northern coast. That pursuit reached its climax in the waters of Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia. On June 27, 1813, Mahone Bay became a bottleneck. The Young Teazer sailed into the inlet as the exit rapidly closed. HMS Hogue moved into position, cutting off the primary escape. The arrival of La Hogue and Sherwood completed the blockade, trapping the privateer. Johnson was cornered. He was trapped geographically by 3 warships and legally by a broken oath that made surrender impossible. Lieutenant Johnson was known for a violent temper and had previously vowed that he would never be taken alive. He understood the certainty of his fate. Surrendering meant a guaranteed trip to the gallows for his broken parole. As the British ships closed in on June 27th, Johnson took a decisive action on the deck. Instead of preparing for a final boarding action against the British, he deliberately retrieved a single glowing hot coal. He threw the coal directly into the Young Teazer's main powder magazine. The resulting massive, catastrophic explosion obliterated the ship. The blast was so violent that it instantly killed almost the entire crew. Johnson's choice converted a naval capture into an act of absolute destruction, the final escape for a man legally bound to the gallows. This event illustrates the concept of mythogenesis, where a moment of visible historical trauma is preserved through local legend. The details of the modern folklore align perfectly with the historical record, as reports of the phantom ship peak every year on the anniversary of the explosion. The atmospheric triggers in the myth, the fog and the moon, echo the reality of 19th-century naval blockades, where visibility was the difference between life and death. This aligns with reports of a schooner entirely consumed by fire, sailing through the bay just as the Young Teazer did in its final moments. Legend says the burning ship approaches modern vessels as if to ram them, an echo of the desperation felt on board in 1813. The apparition always ends the same way. It explodes into a ball of fire and vanishes. Atlantic Canadian folklore has effectively acted as a preservation tool, freezing the terror of June 27, 1813, into the region's cultural memory. The Teazer Light remains a haunting reminder of the War of 1812, the ultimate echo of the deadly, rigid cost of naval parole.